On the evening of the event, Mum bathed both me and my sister, then dressed her up in her fairy costume. Meanwhile, she helped me into the red velvet dress, the white socks, and the shoes. She barely used any makeup this time, just enough to soften the look. Then she handed me a pale blue raincoat one cousin Brenda had left behind, since it was still drizzling outside. Bundled up in our raincoats and wellies, we headed off to the church hall down the hill. And for the first time, I wasn't nervous. I was excited. When we got to the church hall, Mum nudged me. "Go give your dad a big surprise," she whispered. I froze. I wasn't afraid of Dad, but I had no idea how he'd react to the costume. He was halfway up a ladder adjusting a spotlight when I called out to him. He turned, blinked, and nearly lost his balance. "Jane," he shouted. "When did you get here?" I laughed nervously. "It's me, Dad Mike. This is my costume." "Mum's idea." He burst into laughter. "Good grief. You look just like her." "Well, good luck. I think you've got a real chance if they think you're who you say you are." I joined the other kids enjoying the games, snacks, and even a bit of dancing. At one point, the vicar, who was making his rounds with each of the costume contestants, came over. "Your turn, young lady," he said with a twinkle in his eye and led me onto the dance floor. I tried to protest, but he was already mid-spin and clearly having the time of his life. I just went along with it, grinning awkwardly. Then came the big event, the fancy dress parade. Girls went first, and the judges, a panel from the Mothers Union, held up scorecards. My sister placed second in her group, just behind a very sparkly Cinderella. Then it was time for the 10-plus group. Tim won first place with his incredible Dalek costume, complete with sound effects, which we all knew came courtesy of his dad, the local radio repairman. I didn't place until the chairwoman of the judges stood up and made a surprise announcement. "We'd like to give a special prize to Mike for the most convincing transformation." Even the vicar was fooled. The crowd laughed and clapped. My friends came up to congratulate me, a few even saying that costume must have been fun to wear. Walking home that night with Mum, Dad, Auntie, and my sister, the rain had stopped, so I carefully walked in my costume and ballet shoes. Mum said I should be careful not to scuff them, but just this once, I could wear them home. Later that night, I lay in bed, the wardrobe door slightly open. The red velvet dress and other costumes hung quietly inside. I fell asleep looking at them, remembering the fun of the evening and wondering when the next chance to wear something that special might come. Mum decided it was getting late. Jane looked tired from her long journey, and it was time to get ready for bed. Auntie stepped in and prepared a warm, relaxing bath for her. I stayed downstairs helping Mum tidy up as the two caught up privately. When Jane came back down in her soft pink pajamas and matching slippers, gifts from one of their travels, I couldn't help but notice how different they were from my plain, striped flannel ones. I didn't say anything, but I admired the elegance of her outfit from afar. Jane had always been bold, even in her clothes. Dinner that night was classic, sausages and mash. We were both sleepy from the journey and excitement, so Dad scooped us up, one under each arm, and carried us upstairs like we were 5 years old again. We giggled all the way. As a special treat, they let us share the guest room. It might seem unusual now, but at that age, 10 years old, it was just a sleepover with your favorite cousin. We were warned with smiles and wagging fingers. No talking. Of course, we didn't listen. Jane, always the storyteller, began sharing tales of her time in Benghazi. She told me about riding horses in the desert, visiting a Bedouin camp, and the time she was mistaken for a boy because she wore jodhpurs and rode alone. When they asked her name, she blurted out the first one that came to mind, mine. She laughed, and I laughed with her, imagining her galloping across sand dunes being called Mike by complete strangers. I asked about her school in Germany, and she rolled her eyes. "Total bore," she said. I mentioned how much I liked her school uniform, much fancier than mine, but she just shrugged and told me I could have it if I liked it so much. "I'm never wearing it again," she said. That made me pause. I started imagining what it would feel like to wear something so neat, so put together, so different. We lay there talking in whispers until the conversation drifted into silly games. We had a tradition, a tickle challenge. Whoever laughed first had to give up a pillow, then a blanket, then the better side of the bed. Before long, we were rolling with laughter, making quiet bets and swapping silly dares. It was just childhood nonsense, full of joy and mischief. Eventually, we swapped pajama tops as part of one of our classic "you lost the game" dares. Hers was soft and silky, and though I'd never say it out loud, I liked how it felt light, smooth, like wearing a dream. She fell asleep quickly, worn out from her travels. I lay awake for a while, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything she'd done, everything she'd seen, and how, just for a moment, it felt like I'd stepped into her world. Just then Ani came in to see if we were asleep. I lay still like a little angel hoping that I would not move the covers. In the dark room, she gave me a kiss on the forehead saying, "Night-night, Mike," then to Jay, "Night-night, Jane." As she tucked us in, she must have seen my pink top. I heard her whisper to Mum outside the bedroom, "Mike's playing at being Jane again. He's wearing her pink top." Mum muttered something about, "They're so sweet together. It's only a dress-up game." I was in seventh heaven in silky girls, jamas, and being called Jane. Which name, by the way, I adopted for girly me before my present wife decided I was an Angela Jane. In the morning, we woke to hear Mum calling us to breakfast. We quickly changed back into our own jamas and ran down to a lovely plate of ham and eggs, which Aunt Nell had sent to post-war UK with Jay. Nothing was said about last night. After breakfast, we washed and changed into play clothes. I always wanted Jay to wear one of her skirts to play, but she decided she was going to be a boy that day and wore my old shorts and top with fawn ankle socks and sandals. We were to go to Elmstead Woods for a picnic on our bikes. I quickly decided that we would play some games that I would enjoy and stuffed into my saddlebag an old petticoat of Mum's that I had hidden in my room under the floorboards for the past few years. One of my earliest memories is of hiding under Mum's bed, a place where I could disappear into my own little world. Draped from the bedside was one of her old petticoats, soft and flowing. I remember reaching out to touch it, fascinated by its texture. Even as a child, there was something about that fabric that stirred a deep sense of comfort and curiosity in me. That summer, Jane and I spent countless hours in Elmstead Woods. It was our playground, our sanctuary. We climbed trees, raced our bikes, and turned the world into our own private adventure. One morning, the woods were especially quiet. We found our secret den beneath a cluster of bushes and began inventing one of our usual games, switching roles. Jane, ever the bold one, had chosen to wear my old shorts and top that day, declaring she'd be the boy. I didn't argue. She pulled off the look better than I expected. In a moment of playful mischief, I pulled a surprise from my saddlebag, an old costume petticoat I had hidden away. It had belonged to Mum, a leftover from some long-forgotten party. I threw it over myself and ran through the clearing like a character in a fairy tale. The light fabric caught the breeze, billowing behind me as Jane laughed and clapped like a theater audience. "You look like someone out of a movie," she said, breathless. We ran, we played, and we made up stories about who we were pretending to be: royalty, explorers, characters from the books we read at the library. That petticoat became my cape, my gown, my magical disguise. After returning home and eating lunch, Mum took us to the local library, one of my favorite places in those quiet, pre-television days. On the walk back, I told Jane about the church social she had missed, the costume contest, the surprise twist where I dressed in her red velvet dress, and how even Dad mistook me for her. Jane's eyes lit up. "I want to see it," she exclaimed. I hesitated. "It was just a one-time thing," I mumbled, but she wasn't letting it go. That evening, after supper, Jane brought it up again, this time in front of everyone. Mum, Auntie, and even Dad joined in with stories and laughter about the night of the contest. Dad chuckled. "I still say you fooled half the room, Mike." Encouraged, and, truthfully, a bit excited, I agreed. Mom whisked me away to help me get ready. She pulled out the red velvet dress, the ankle socks, and the familiar ballet shoes. She brushed my hair and pinned on Jane's old braid for fun, just like she had before. A little touch of blush on the cheeks, and I was ready. When we returned to the living room, there was a round of applause. Jane's eyes widened. "You're prettier than me in that dress," she laughed. To complete the switch, Mom helped Jane into my Sunday outfit, trousers, shirt, and even the too big tie. We both laughed at how strange, yet freeing it felt. We sat together, sipping hot chocolate, swapping stories about our lives. Jane told us about riding horses in the desert, trying strange foods, and the time she was mistaken for a boy because of her jodhpurs and confidence. Her stories made my quiet life in Bromley feel small, but that night I didn't feel small. I felt bold, seen, whole. That evening wasn't just play, it was a memory that stayed with me for years. A moment of freedom and imagination where I could just be myself without anyone raising an eyebrow. Soon it was bedtime, and the fun had to come to an end, at least for the evening. Mom gently reminded me to change out of the costume, and Auntie carefully folded the red velvet dress and placed it in the wardrobe. As she did, Jane noticed the other dresses hanging there. "Are those mine?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "Yes," Auntie smiled. "They came in that parcel from America. We saved them while you were away." Jane didn't look thrilled. Auntie suggested, "Maybe you both could wear them tomorrow while playing?" I turned bright red, and Jane muttered something about not wanting to wear a boring old dress again. That night, we slept in separate rooms. I lay in bed thinking about the evening, the laughter, the costumes, the feeling of stepping into something different, even just for a moment. My thoughts wandered, as they often did, into a space of possibility and play. The next morning, I woke up to the mouth-watering smell of bacon, eggs, and toast. I stumbled out of bed and peeked in on Jane, who was just waking up as well. I gave her a playful nudge, and we both hurried downstairs, still half sleepy and fully hungry. Mum smiled. "There you two are, a pair of sleepyheads. Dad's already off to work. What's the plan today?" Before I could answer, Auntie chimed in. "What about dress up? Remember the dresses from last night, Jane? Mike wore one, and it was quite the show." I froze for a second, not in fear, but in that moment of bashful indecision. Jane shrugged and said, "Sure, why not? It could be fun." I hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but only if you wear one too." And that was that. We went upstairs and picked out 2 matching dresses from the wardrobe, soft wool with a faint gingham pattern, smocking across the chest, and puff sleeves. Not my usual play clothes, but somehow, right for the day. Auntie smiled as she noticed I was still wearing the base layer from the night before. "Well, that saves time," she said with a wink. Mum helped tidy up our hair so that we both looked a little more polished, 2 kids ready to take on the day in style. "There," she said, stepping back. Auntie laughed and added, "Peas in a pod." We looked at each other and laughed too, 2 cousins, dressed alike, full of adventure and ready for whatever the day had in store. We stood side by side in front of the hallway mirror. It was strange. In those matching dresses, with our hair fluffed just right, we looked unmistakably like 2 11-year-old girls. Jane raised an eyebrow and said, "We should just go out and play like this." Mum hesitated. "I'm not sure what the neighbors would say." But Auntie waved it off. Number 20's on holiday, 16's at work, and the folks at 14 never talked to us anyway. The only thing that gave me pause was the thought that my friend Malk might come by. He sometimes showed up unannounced. I decided I'd handle that if it happened. Out in the garden, we thanked Jane for being a good sport. "It's fine," she said, shrugging. "It's just a bit of fun." We rode around the garden for a bit, Jane using my new bike while I fixed up the old one. We were laughing, racing, taking corners dramatically, pretending to be in our own movie. Then Jane called from the back gate, "Race you around the block." The back road was mostly used by delivery trucks, coalmen, tradesmen, that sort of thing. We sped out, looping past the quiet backs of the houses, hair flying. I'd nearly forgotten about the dresses as we pedaled faster and faster. As we rounded the far end, I spotted Malk's dad in his garden. He looked up and caught my eye. I looked away quickly and rode faster, heart thumping. Did he recognize me? We zoomed back through the bottom path and pulled into the garden, out of breath. Mum stood there, arms folded. What on earth have you two been up to? She held up the phone. That was Malk's mum. She said how nice it was to see Jane back and how sweet it was that she had a friend with her. Jane and I exchanged wide-eyed looks. You two had better be more careful, Mum said, shaking her head. Now go change. We're off to the shops.